YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Now today, for all you space detectives out there, I'm going to be showing you the giant veg that I showed in my previous video. This one here. This is the previous video I did, Mars Giant Veg, New Jofruit HiRISE Images, Part 1. Now this is Part 2 to that, and I'm not just going to show you these recent images, which mostly will be at the end of the video, but I'm going to show you how my theory about these has evolved over the last 2 years, about these specific things, because I've been doing a lot of deep research into dunes on Mars, and in fact I've not seen anyone else do so much research on this over the last few years. There probably are people somewhere, but I'm not aware of any. There certainly aren't anyone on YouTube, and I can't see any other people doing this research going this far. So this is the culmination of a lot of research. I'm still not 100% sure exactly what these are. They're certainly not dunes, okay? There are many types of dunes on Mars, and I have shown most of them on my channel over the last few years, especially the last 4 or 5 years. And I've shown probably about 100 different types of dunes and sort of weird structures on the ground that appear like dunes, but when you look up close, they're not, okay? Some of them look more like structures, some of them look more like plants like these, like giant veg. Some look more like long sort of vines on the ground, often which are frozen over with ice, okay? Now, unlike most of those, these are not frozen over. This is what they look like in the summer, or at least in the warmer part of the year, okay? Now, the years on Mars are twice as long as ours, so they've got long seasons. Now, I don't know how old these things are. These could be 5 years old, they could be 500 years old. I have absolutely no idea, because we've only been seeing them for a few years on the surface, well, last couple of years anyway, these particular things. And we just don't know how long they've been there. But I would imagine they're probably around the 5 or 10 years old. I don't know. They could be 10 times that. I really don't know. But for something to grow this big, I would imagine would take quite some time. Maybe 10 or 20 years. I don't know. Because these are absolutely enormous. And what I did on the cover of this image, as it says in the description, I've got 4 stages here in one image. Now this is really important, this image, because we have a juvenile, we have adolescent here, we have an adult, and then we have a breeding pair, okay? So you've got stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4's at the top here. And what happens when they've bred, of course, is these long pods appear, or vine-like pods, a bit like you would see on a pea plant or a rudder bean plant or something like that. These long pods come out, and when I say long, some of them are ridiculously long, okay? Now, this is mind-boggling, and I'm still really struggling to get my head around this. Now, what I've got here, I'll show you all these things in a minute. Now, I've got a lot of stuff up here, and it's very hot here, and I'm hoping my computer will not overheat. Now, I've got 3 gigapans to look at here. Now, this is the black and white one. It's actually red, but yeah, it looks black and white. And this has been contrasted. In other words, I've cranked up the contrast to really bring out the shapes in this. And I've also got this one here. This is the IRB, infrared and blue. And I've also got this one, which is the one I used in my original video 2 years ago, which is the RGB one. Now, I thought 2 or 3 years ago that RGB meant that was natural color. Now, but it doesn't. When it comes to the Mars satellite images from this Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter satellite, it seems that the RGB ones are not actually the real color, okay? Because we know that the ground on Mars is not this color. So this has been red filtered. And this is actually much more close to the real color here, although this part of the image here has a green filter on it, okay? But the actual color is probably more like this yellowy sort of color here, okay? Yellowy kind of olivey color. Now what I've done, I've lined these up so we can look at the same things from different angles and in different filters. Now the red one is nothing like the actual real colour. This is way too red. But what you can see in this is really interesting, because you can actually see the spines on this one really well. They show up better in the red filter for some reason. This particular one here, you can see spines on the top. Now, dunes do not have spines or hairs on them like this. That's a simple fact, okay? So there's a lot of people saying that these are just dunes. No, they're not. Now, some of them are. Some of them have sand over them, which may make them look like dunes. Absolutely. And at different times of year, they are covered in sand. They get sand drifting over them, which then freezes later on, okay? So you get these long formations, massive formations, in fact, and you often will see these covered in sand, which then freezes, okay? But these, most of these, are not covered in sand. They do have sand up against them a bit, like we have here, just here. But you can see a birthing pair here, or a breeding pair, just here. Now, I've shown these before, so I'm not going to go into great detail with all of these. But what I'm going to try and do is give you an overview of these and how they form and where they are and why they look like they do. Okay, I don't 100% know exactly what type of plants these are. They could be cactuses or cacti. They could be gourds. They could be some other type of plant that we really don't understand, and they may contain antifreeze. Most fruit on Earth, or at least certain types of fruit on Earth, contain quite high levels of alcohol, especially when they're very overripe. Now, for instance, if you ate a bunch of bananas before doing a drug test, if you're a sports person, for instance, you can actually test for alcohol consumption. In other words, you'd probably fail a driving alcohol test, okay? If you ate a whole bunch of overripe bananas, but if they were underripe, they would have almost no alcohol in them, okay? So now these could possibly be producing lots of alcohol in order to stop them freezing completely over, okay? But also, as I've suggested before, when these get covered in snow and ice in the winter, that may form like a thermal blanket over them and stop them actually freezing completely through, okay? I don't know exactly, but that is a possibility. So snow and ice could actually protect these in the winter, and for many, many months, these would be just frozen over and look like long lines of dunes. And the crazy thing is, on here, you've got the birthing pair there. This is a typical, or one of the best examples of a pair that have got a centre vine or pod outwards, and you can actually see that there are smaller ones inside this pod here, and there's one here, and these are joining to these here. And there's another one here. This is interesting, this one, because we got a pod here with one on the end, and you can actually see the lumps inside the pod where the seeds are, or the seedlings, or babies are, right? But there's another one here at the end. So I'm still trying to work out how these actually work. In other words, how they spread, how they breed, and they may actually move. Now, I'm not saying they move along quickly or whatever. Over, say, 10 years, these would appear to move, as some at one end die off and the ones grow at the front end. So as a sort of dune field would move, it would blow from one end to the other, so the back end of the dune would gradually dissipate and the front end of the dune would move forward, okay? So they would appear to move over time. I'm not saying they actually move, but they would appear to as a group, okay? So that would be a sort of optical illusion, I guess, if you time-lapse them. But who knows, they may actually move. And this is absolutely insane. We have one here with a sort of long pod coming out, and you can actually see that there are juveniles or smaller ones in this pod here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the one next to it. You can see them here. Now the pod eventually rots away or dissipates, and then we end up with lines of them like this. These are smaller ones here. You can see them here separating off into individuals, right? And as they get older, they get more rounder. But when they split off like this, initially they're more sort of ovoid in shape, teardrop shaped. But as they get older, they separate off and then they become rounder and bigger until they get to this sort of size here, which is pretty big. Now, some of these are huge, right? There's some really big ones over here. There's a group of very large ones here. But what I'm guessing is that one or two of these will probably die off because they're too close together. And there's probably only a finite amount of water below the ground for them to drink. Okay. Now, that means that some of these will probably die off and then they would end up being equidistant like this. Okay, because the ground can only support so many, right? But these are huge, well over 100 meters. This one is nearly 200 meters across, huge. But that's as big as they get, right? So far, I haven't found any bigger than that. And often you get pairs, they start to pair up like this. And then when these two are pairing up, so these are mating, right? It seems, these two. I'll try not to zoom too quickly here. And then we have the result of that down here. When they mate, they send these runners or pods out with young inside, which you can see like pea pods or runner beans, okay? But these are along the ground. Now, obviously, some of these are very long. In fact, one of them here, I think that one I just showed you, is 2 kilometers long, right? You can actually measure it. You got the measure here. This is accurate, right? It starts here, and you can fit that measure into that about 4 times. So this is around 2,000 meters long. It's probably about 1,900 or something like that. I don't know exactly, but some of these appear even longer, but they've started to split up. So when they split up, they form individuals or juveniles or young, I should say. They start off with young, which then become juvenile as they plump out and go round. And then they get to adult size, which is around 150, 120, 30, 50 meters wide in diameter. And then when they get really big, full adults, they then breed and send out these runners or pods like this, which then split into individuals. Okay, so you can actually see the process in each stage here. We've got young, we've got adolescents, we've got adults and breeding pairs. Okay, we've got all stages of them here. And on my website here, which I do recommend you check out, I've got a couple of things for you to check out here. Now, there's this website, ArtAlienTV. There will be a link to this page below. This is the Mars Plants and Water page. And this is the main feature video at the top, my previous video. There's loads of examples of these and giant vines and stuff, but there's also lots of other types of growth on the ground. A lot of it looks like it's feeding off meltwater or sending runners right down through the permafrost to the underground aquifers, okay, which there are on Mars. And these have been spotted by satellite, okay? They can actually send down ground penetrating radar and read what's going on under the ground. And there are large lakes in certain areas under the ground. But what I also think is happening with these is, at least these, I think, are collecting water on the surface rather than getting all their water from below the surface. What I think they do, and I'll show you an example of that here, right, is that they have these spines on them. Now, in the red, you can see it much better here for some reason, in the red. And you can see these spines. Now, cacti have spines, or cactuses have spines. Many plants do. And what they do is they collect water, because what happens is on these little spines or hairs, quite thick hairs or spines, the frost will form on them, and then when it warms up, that frost will then melt, sending the water straight onto the body of this cactus or whatever it is. It could be a type of fungi, it could be some type of vegetable, I don't know. But whatever type of plant this is, the spines would act as a water collecting device, okay? And many plants on Earth use this technique, especially desert plants, desert succulents like cacti, okay? And a lot of them have these fine, really fine kind of spines or hair. They look like hairs, but they're spines. Many of these are poisonous on Earth, and I expect them to be on Mars as well. They may even be hallucinogenic and contain alcohol or other interesting chemical compounds that we don't quite understand yet. Okay, but I'm guessing that these are either poisonous or hallucinogenic or full of alcohol. So they may be edible, they may not be. Okay, some of them may be, some of them may not be, and I'm sure these are not the only sort, because there are similar ones to this on other parts of Mars, which are kind of T-shape. Some of them are kind of triangular shape, right? Not quite triangular, but they're sort of more of like an ovoid triangle. And you can see them all over Mars, right? These are just the ones I'm focusing on today, really, but there are many types of these, and I'm sure some of them are also plants. And they grow very, very large in formations like this, which then become covered in sand and then covered up and then frozen. Okay? And I've actually got evidence of that here. Now this is Google Earth straight Mars. So if you go on Google Earth, select the little planet up here. There's a little planet at the top. Select Mars and go to the North Polar region. This is the North Polar region here. And you've got this dark line going around here where the different images have been stitched. This is the North Pole and this is the North Polar area or region, okay? This is the melt zone. This is known as the melt zone. There's also one in the south. Now, in the summer, the ice cap melts along this line. This is the actual melt. This is like a tidal line almost. And there are millions, if not billions, of these things on the ground. You can see them here, right? Now, you're not going to see them in great detail here, but in some areas you can see small patches of them. And in other areas, they just look like big smudges. But these are the same things, but are drifted in sand, okay? The sand has drifted up against them and kind of blotted them out. But in some areas, you can see them pretty clearly, and they're quite reflective and bright, and you can see them in long line formations like this, like I've just showed you. You can see the lines here. You can see them in patches here. They're quite reflective. They look metallic. I've often speculated that many of these may actually be structures, and a lot of them may be. But I do wonder whether that most of these up here in the northern polar region, in the melt zone here, are actually vegetables or plants. It's hard to say exactly because I don't know if these particular ones are or not, but they're all about the same size as the giant gourds, stroke cacti, right? They're about the same size as these, and they grow or form in exactly the same formations. You know, I'm seeing the same patterns, right? We're seeing the same sort of lines and groupings as we see in these gigapans. Let's go to another one here, line formation 1, and there's billions of them. And obviously, in some areas they're really dark because of the way the light was when the photographs were taken. So they're not very clear. Okay, and in other areas, they go right round the whole North Pole here to the other side. And they look kind of brown like this. Now, some people have speculated that these are herds of animals. They're not herds of animals. And some people have speculated they may be very large termite mounds. Some of them may be, absolutely. I agree. But I think most of them are plants, and they grow in the same formation patterns as we're seeing in the satellite images that I've got up close here, right? But this is just in greater detail, and we're seeing up close detail. And my favorite 3 are these, which I've used on the cover. They're awesome. And in the red one, these look particularly good, and I've shown these on the cover of 1 or 2 videos. They are awesome. There they are. There's a group, well, it's a group of 4 really, because this one's sort of just below, but they're absolutely amazing. And in the green, the sort of yellowy green that they are here, they look even better, because this is really actually what they probably look like in reality, because the IRB images are not color filtered, even though the edge of this one has a green filter here. You can see the green here. That's been added. But this is the actual color, right? Or very close to it. These are absolutely incredible, and you can actually see that they're not dunes when you look at them closely, because they have these vine-like things coming out and going under into the ground, each one. They're way too uniform, and they've got details that you just don't see on dunes. Even frosty dunes don't have these details, okay? They've got these kind of white, puffy kind of leaf parts coming out at one end that seem to go underneath. And if you look carefully, those go underneath and form like a little blanket on the ground. So they're kind of raised off the ground slightly here. You can see they're raised there. This one here has got a leaf kind of part to it here. It seems to go into the ground. Okay. Look at these details. Dunes don't have these, right? They really don't. So I don't see how they can be dunes. And there's no real other explanation for these other than the fact they must be some kind of living organism. There's another really cool one down here with some interesting detail here. Look at this. They're absolutely incredible. And I'm still almost speechless when I look at them. They are unbelievable. So I'm not going to go on and on showing you these because I've shown a lot of this before. And I have explained in other videos what I think these are and how they work. But they're just incredible. Just look at them. It's mind-boggling what we're looking at. And the sheer size of these things is absolutely incredible. And the fact that they have these long pods that are 2 kilometers long, 2,000 meters. That's well over a mile, okay? That's a mile from about there to there, right? It's insane, the actual scale of these. And as I've said before, these are so large, you could hollow them out and live in them as structures. And maybe insects or people even do that on Mars. We don't know. We simply don't know. Because these may contain enough water and food to last for many, many years, each one. And when one runs out, you could just move into the next one. So we would be like parasitic insects in that way, like wasps burrow into apples and stuff and then eat them from the inside. We could live like that on Mars if these are edible. If they're not edible, we may be able to extract the liquid from them and purify it and have an endless supply of water, okay, using water purification. Okay, so that is possible. These may be the secret to us living on Mars. Instead of building stuff, we could actually move into some of these things. It would require some imagination and a bit of technical know-how, but I've already worked out most of this stuff that it could be possible. These are enormous. I mean, this one here, how big is that? That's nearly it's about 150 meters. That's huge. All right? How many people do you think could live in that? Unbelievable. So there we are. So check these out. I'll put links to all these as usual below. We've got the different color filters here. We've got this lovely IRB one here. We've got the RGB one here. And we've got the black and white one here, which shows you a good overview of these. And like I said, go on Google Earth. Go to the North Polar Melt Zone, which goes right round the North Pole here. You can see that line as it goes round. That's where they all are. They go right the way round. And there are billions of them. And I'm sure there are different types. Some are bigger, some are smaller, some are much more reflective. But it does depend on what time of year it is and whether they're unfrozen. And when they are frozen up and covered in sand, they just look like big smudges. But there are billions of them, right? And this is probably, as I've said before, what is causing the methane spikes on Mars. Because when these die off every year, it would cause methane because they're organic, okay? So that would explain it. So not only do we have a possible food source and living building source, we also may have solved the mystery of the Mars methane spikes, which NASA really just don't even address. So there we are, and I've marked all these on here, but you can find these quite easily. Just go to the Northern Hemisphere and look for these dark patches, and some of them are in quite obvious formations, like I've shown you, but they're not in great detail. So check this out also. I've done a Mars giant veg playlist with all the related videos, and there's about 5 or 6 in here, and there are different types of these dunes, and they're the ones that look like spiders. They're called spiders. Some look like T-shaped objects on the ground. Some look like long sort of vines. There's all sorts of weird stuff going on here. So I think there are different types of these plants. They grow all year round, and half the year round are covered in ice, snow, and frozen over, which is why they look like dunes. And they often have big drifts of sand over them, which make them look like big brown or dark smudges on the surface. And you can see it all on Google Earth. It all matches up, okay? That's what these are. But I'm sure it's possible that there may be some people or things living inside these. This is a really nice clip. This is the best ones I could find. And they're in formation. You can see line formations here, right, at the top. They're about 400 feet wide, which is about 150 meters, right, thereabouts, which is the same size. Now, I spotted these way before I realised what they were, and I spotted these years ago, obviously 2017. Lots of other people have spotted them, but they've never come up with an actual explanation for what we're looking at. They just say, oh, these look like domes or something, and that's what I thought initially. But I've been researching these for a long time now, over 5 years, and I think a lot of them are actual plants on the ground, like I'm showing you, because they follow the same patterns and formations, and they are the same size, and they're quite reflective, some of them, and the brighter ones are quite yellowy, and I think that's why they look so reflective. They're kind of gold looking, right? And if the light catches them right and they're a bit sort of iced up, these will be highly reflective like metal, okay? Because they're that kind of bright golden colour. They remind me a bit of golden delicious apples in a way. But initially we thought they looked more like tomatoes. And this one's got some nice spines on it. You can see the spines on this one here. You can actually see them there on the edge, sticking out. They're quite fine, but they're there. They're more like sort of big hairs. Dunes do not have hairs or spines. They do not have vines coming out. They do not have vines going into the ground. They do not birth them in long pods like we see here. And in the red filter, they look pretty awesome as well, more like tomatoes. So the colour can really change your perspective of what you're looking at. That's what I'm trying to say here. So check it out. Check out the playlist. There'll be a link to that. Check out the website. There'll be a link to that. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Smash that like button, and I will see you soon.